Kelly Sheen, District Manager for the Trinity County Resource Conservation District.
And Denise Wesley, GIS Manager for the Trinity County RCD.
Xander Winter, Forester of the Watershed Center.
Carol Hall, Trinity Center Volunteer Fire Department.
Chris Cole, Forest Health Program Manager, Trinity County RPD.
Jerry Corey, Downriver Volunteer Fire Company.
Sarah Akridge, District Ranger, National Recreation Area.
John Flurry, Downriver Fire. Todd Hamilton, Forester, National Recreation Area.
Randy Paris, Forestry and Fuel Program Director at the Watershed Center.
Ren Winter, Forester with Rock Creek Timber and Trinity River Lumber.
Charlie Curtin, Grizzly Corps Fellow, TCICD.
Miles Raymond, Grizzly Corps Fellow, TCR.
Amelia Flights, I'm the Trinity County Fire Safe Council Coordinator and the Watershed Program Manager for the Trinity County Resource Conservation District. And so we'll go online and I'm just going to do it in order of selves. So I'm going to start with Nancy.
Hey, I'm Nancy Curran, Six Rivers National Forest, Mad River Fuels Forester.
Thank you. And Jerry?
Hi, everybody. Jerry Cousins, Trinity County Collaborative, and I'm afraid I have to log off a little after 2 o'clock.
Great. Thanks for joining us. And Oliver?
Hello, Oliver Rogers, civil engineer with Trinity River Restoration Program.
Great. Thank you for joining us today. Let's see, Larry Glass.
Hi, Larry Glass with Safe Alternatives for Our Forest Environment and the Trinity Collaborative.
Bethany. Okay, I'll move to Sandy.
Hi, Sandy Faulkner and Dan Montgomery from Fire Prevention Weaverville.
Thank you. Mike.
Mike Ammon, just a landowner.
Thank you for joining us. Can I ask what community you live in?
Salyer in the South Fork area.
Thank you. Philip.
Philip Sini, Trinity County OES Manager.
Great. Nate.
Nate Orich, the fuels planner for the Trinity River Management Unit at the Shasta Trinity.
Great. Regina.
Hi, this is Gina Moon, Salyer Advisor Ambassador, and here's a Willow Creek Fire Safe Council rep.
Nancy Anderson.
Hi, Nancy Anderson from Lewiston, local area advisor, and I forget the other title, but hello all.
Neighborhood Ambassador and local area advisor. Yeah,
that's it. That's the one.
David Hermio. There we go. Okay, and then Keith. He has other things going on. Okay, so thank you guys for all joining us today. Just to cover those who didn't have an opportunity or their sound wasn't working, we have Keith Greenwood from SPI, Bethany Llewellyn from the Trinity County Resource Conservation District, who is the Forest Health Project Coordinator, and David Hermio, who is a local forester with CAL FIRE. So thank you everybody for joining us today, and I will turn it back over to Todd.
So we'll move on to item 2, additions, changes to the agenda.
I know that the Forest Service wanted to discuss, they provided me a map for some of the priority zones and discuss many of the funding that came out last week. And so we would add that probably either under our discussion section or just before or into the grant section. They all kind of fit together. So we'll add it as item C in discussion.
All righty, so moving on to the discussions. So item A, Northern Trinity Lake project collaboration, sending past existing and future project shape files to the email address listed for her to incorporate into one map for our planning purposes.
Denise, will you go ahead and share the screen and we'll start to fly around? So my intent here is to first show existing projects that are being planned, and we'll do a round robin and go around the room. Denise is showing our online mapping portal. And so this is where it includes the community wildfire protection plan projects that have been identified. But right now she's showcasing the projects that are in planning, planned, or in implementation. The intent is that over the next few months, we'll be rotating through all of the different units for as designated in the community wildfire protection plan. And so we started with the North Lake. And so today we're going to do discussion of existing projects just to get everybody on the same playing field. And then we'll work on having a discussion of priorities, future projects, types of projects for where to go, and then try to lay out some other items. And I think Tim or Nate might have some contributions for other pieces to the puzzle. So I want to welcome first U.S. Forest Service that are coming up to us from Shasta Lake and start off the conversation with them and the projects that they have in the upper Trinity Lake area.
Excellent. Thank you so much for having us. We weren't sure how many would be in person versus Zoom, so I'm really glad we came in person to see you all. Our focus within the boundaries of the NRA management unit is on our Trinity Camps project, which Todd will speak more, and then also partnering with the Trinity River Management Unit on the Bowerman Fuels Reduction Project, which I imagine they will want to speak to directly since they have primary lead on that. But I'll pass it to Todd to talk a little bit about Trinity Camps.
Okay, thank you, everyone. For folks like Carol and Kelly, this will be kind of a refresher, and Randy, of course, and others.
Yeah, and I just want to say, so I'm the one that was bugging Amelia to try and have this. So I apologize to the people that aren't from the North Lake, for maybe getting in the weeds a little bit, but there are a bunch of projects going on up in the North Lake. And so we're trying to make sure they're, where they overlap, where the gaps are. And so that's why we're taking up your time.
And how much time would you want to, we don't want to spend too much time if you have an idea.
So I'd like to spend an hour overall. I think we've got 4 priority projects up here. So if we could do 10 minutes to each of those larger projects, and then we'll be able to fit in some of the other components and then the larger planning in the remaining. And I think that there's room for a secondary meeting as well. But for the intent of today, let's stick to 10 minutes, please.
10 minutes. Okay, that's good. So what I handed out comes from what we call a project initiation letter. Basically, it's just a formal process we have that says, hey, you're assigned to a project. These are the team members. And these are some of the concepts that we're going to try and move forward. What I have here is provided some snippets from that. So you don't need to know the policy and the NEPA side of it, but I really want to stick with the stand density stuff and biology and how that might influence our landscape. So again, this is all within the National Recreation Area boundary, which is essentially a pretty tight little area. If you guys are familiar, it's basically all the way around the lake itself. But there's a lot to this handout that I have provided. And those of you online, I apologize if you do want this. We can certainly make that available. I'm assuming.
I'll attach it to the minutes. Yep.
Perfect. Okay. There's a lot in here, and I'm not going to go over all of it. This is something I'll give you enough that maybe piques your interest. And if you wanted to engage a little bit more, there's enough information in here for you, I believe, that would help facilitate your understanding of what we're proposing to be doing. Okay. So the main thing is on page 1. And hopefully this isn't anything new to you guys, but essentially this table right here is, I don't know, like a stand and stock table. So along the x-axis, I'm showing tree diameters in 2-inch classes, and I'm starting at 10 inches and I'm moving up. If I were to go less than 10 inches and show that, you wouldn't even be able to see these lines, right? Because we're talking upwards of 500 plus, maybe 1,000 trees on the acre. What I really want to highlight is that green bars. What species is that? Does that seem a little bit out of proportion compared to the rest of the other species that are on that landscape? This is just one example. I've got about 50 from stand exams that we've done over time. This is consistently across our landscape. And I would say that we have a Doug fir problem. Okay. And that's also, you can tell it's also in that kind of smaller, I'll say smaller is less than 20 inch. That's less than 20 inch diameter class. So that's what we have out there, right? So mixed conifer forest, but this is a dry mixed conifer forest. You've got a ton of lighter fuels, surprise, surprise. The results of that are not good. You flip the page, this is all that nerdy stuff I get involved in. So relative density indices or stand density index. The main point I want to highlight to you guys are the species. I gave you the dominant species that we have on the landscape, right? So the 85% of the most species that we have: Doug fir, incense cedar, ponderosa, black oak, white fir, and sugar pine. Each one of those have a different relative max. So that's what that max SDI is showing. So Douglas fir and incense cedar can tolerate a much higher density than, for example, ponderosa or black oak. The average for a given site is sitting around 320. Again, this is a relative stand density, and it doesn't mean anything except how you compare it to its max. So above that, I have this thing called understocked, less than 30%, management zone, and imminent mortality. If you're approaching that 60%, you're going to see some mortality, I guarantee it. When you have a mixed conifer forest, you have these shade intolerant species like the pine mixing in with shade tolerant species like fir. That you would expect pine to kind of fade out first because they can't tolerate that high density. Well, even our Douglas fir is at that max. So you guys are seeing it, not whether it's just top kill or whole tree. You guys are seeing it on the landscape, and it's not driven by fire. Some of these just literally have no sap flowing in their xylem and phloem. And so they have no defense mechanism. Flat-headed wood borers are moving in, which is a post-mortem type beetle, are moving into live trees because they think it's dead. Okay. Flip the page again. And this is just some fancy computer modeling, right? They're all wrong, but they're certainly useful. What I'm showing is that in the top left of that image is 2020, and I just push it out till now, and mortality, right? That's just a visual depiction of that. Look at the photograph below that. It's just a ponderosa pine where woodpeckers have been browsing the bark off because of the insect larvae that are in that they're feeding on. That's not just happening to ponderosa pine, that's also happening to Doug fir, and I've never seen that before. The recreation use kind of highlights some values of our concessionaire quantifying how many people are on this landscape. Roughly, we have about 10,000 folks visiting the Trinity National Recreation Area every year. It's about 10,000. How that relates to like Yosemite, I don't know, right? But you guys get a lot. 10,000 seems like a lot to me. So you guys have a beautiful lake. We have a beautiful lake out here. Flip the page again. And that is just showing of all the recreation areas that we have in and around Trinity Lake itself, about 4 of these are accounting for approximately 75% or 3/4 of the total use. Tannery Gulch, Hayward Flat, Alpine View, and Minersville. So all that, those are kind of like, oh, where's the most people going to be? That's there. If the condition of density is relative, is consistent across the landscape, I would assume the same thing in our campgrounds as well as outside of campgrounds. So what are we going to do about it? The proposed action follows that chart, and I'm breaking it down into roughly 3 treatments. And I didn't get too specific. I've got 3 additional pages that'll just, if you're dealing with insomnia, I'm pretty sure I can help you out with that. But treatment 1 is kind of like you're right in the campgrounds, and I'll talk about habitat, and it's not habitat in the campground. We've had those discussions in the woods. If you want to read on your own, there's also stuff that's with that's in campgrounds, but we're not going to propose commercial removal, whereas within the campgrounds we would. And then there's stuff that you kind of go beyond it. to define a particular site, I'm calling it furniture. So if you're about 400 feet or 500 feet from a piece of furniture, or within that range, you're within a site. Anything beyond that is kind of extra, right? You might have a user created trail goes to a cool site. Or just like me, if I was a young man, I would just go and wander, right? So that last treatment 3, is where we're going to be also looking at commercial removal. A good example of that would be flip the page, the final page. Is apologize for the scale. It's 2 scales, it's small, but we have different colors are matching what I have for prescription 1, 2, and 3. That's color coded on your map. So prescription 3, let me back up, sorry. It's 2 or 3, Ridgeville. So if you guys know, I'm sure where Ridgeville is, that's an area surrounding that private community that we would include. It's way off of the rec site, but it's a pretty darn important site anyways, right? That's a community right there. So
Todd, does that map include the airport or not?
and no, good question.
Okay.
Thank you. I'll add that.
We're also including some treatment north of.
Yeah, I have a bunch of specific questions
Okay.
when you get to that.
Yeah,
point.
and I'll wrap this up here in a sec. So there are stuff in the campgrounds, but there's also doesn't make sense to just stop from arbitrary line or 400 feet from furniture. There is a landscape, and there's reasons why we're not going, 20,000 acres. And I'd say time. I don't have time. We're going to lose a lot if we take too much time. But in addition to that, we've had a lot of discussions. We've tweaked some things, and we've also added some things, and that is the Trinity Center Airport. We broke it up into 2 phases. Phase 1, we've pretty much already approved. And that's like mowing the lawn, moving rocks, and making sure that immediate area around that airport is safe. And that's essentially south of Swift Creek. As soon as you go north of Swift Creek, you start getting bigger trees. You're definitely in that flight path. I think it's a 7-to-1 on the takeoff and approach. So you're basically hitting every one of those trees that's about 16, 18 inches or greater. So that would be an overstory removal, and you've got a campground in the understory. So it's a little more complicated. That has been added to this project. Okay, so that's the brief, as much as I can in a short period of time. There is a lot more to this, and I just wanted to highlight some of the key points that I think are driving this project forward.
People are going to be pretty excited about the Ridgeville. I mean, there's people have been asking about getting that whole area around Ridgeville treated for a long time.
Yeah, okay, so can I thank you some questions?
Yeah.
Let me just make one point to those are on Zoom. So Denise has been flying around and clicking on some of the polygons to show the different shape files. So earlier she had selected the one associated with this. So if you're following along on Zoom, we're still on the Trinity Camps project, and then we'll be discussing some of the others as others step up. So yes, go ahead.
So, so earlier you had given us a more detailed description that had 18 sites, so there's still 18 sites plus the airport?
Yeah, I would say 19, so yes.
And
Yeah.
then, are you still proposing to do something out at Ridgeville Island?
Yes.
Yes, okay. And for the Ridgeville, that's the campground, that's not actually around the neighborhood, it's just that the lower tip right around the campground.
Correct. So that would be prescription 1 within the campground. And then there's like a green hash that Kelly's showing you there. That's around it.
Okay.
So I don't know. We're working with Fish and Wildlife Service, our regulatory agency, and how we can actually meet the objective of multiple objectives, I should say, as well as maintaining a habitat that they're protecting. So that's going very well right now. We're going to meet out in the woods at that site specifically.
So that would be Ridgeville, okay.
Yes.
So, so that's part of Trinity Camps, okay.
That's what's been shown.
Can I get clarification? This is still in planning, or the NEPA has been signed? Where do we stand?
We're still in planning.
Okay.
We're going to be kicking off scoping in February, but we have done, Todd and the ID team have done so much prep work on this and so much conversations with the collaborative that I think it should go fairly quickly.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that.
Part of the reason I was trying to do this kind of planning effort was identifying gaps, like where, so doing around the campgrounds is awesome because of the potential for fuel starts and all that kind of stuff. Um, Where would we be as far as access roads to like Tannery and Hayward Flat and Alpine View? I mean, if there's a fire in the campground, is anybody looking at a plan to help with evacuation routes, like a shaded fuel break along the access roads?
Yeah, so
Or there's still
I
a
think
gap?
it's bigger than we certainly are can
Yeah, than
discuss
this
on the
project, for sure.
NRA.
No, like I said, I'm just trying to,
Yeah,
I'm looking at where all the different pieces are, and then I'm trying to figure out, as far as an overall plan, where the gaps are, that
Yeah.
would be future projects.
so I think what you're discussing is definitely a concern. How do we incorporate ingress, egress issues? How far off of a road would we go? Across multiple ownerships. A good example of that would be the road coming into Hayward Flat.
Mhm.
So you got us, it's our administrative road, but then it's a road that leads to an administrative facility that runs through Sierra Pacific Industries.
Right,
I
federal and private.
I would like to consider every road that's meant to access an administrative site is treated as though it's an administrative site. So that's a dream. It doesn't mean it can happen that easily, but I think it can be pulled off, right? And those are the discussions that we're having currently with Fish and Wildlife Service. What is that right prescription that we can all agree on? Where it's like a shaded hill break, so to speak, maybe feathered
Yeah.
on something.
Okay.
But yeah, Tannery Gulch is another one, long way in. There's a lot of stuff. Yep.
Yeah, so,
Yep.
And there's the chair right.
Yeah, please.
Good. Let's go to the front.
so like, okay, like I said, so what we did for our service area was come up with a list of all the assets we're trying to protect, or where there's potential fuel starts, or where there's access roads to communities or Forest Service facilities. And so I've been going down the list and saying, okay, well, this is Trinity Camp, you got this part covered, Watershed Center, you got this part covered, and then I'm trying to figure out where the gaps are. And
So I
for
think we're gonna
future
address
plan.
that a little bit later,
I was just trying to
in this
explain what
conversation.
for the people that haven't been listening to me bug people about this, I'm just trying to explain why I'm being pretty much in the weeds, because I'm trying to figure out future gaps projects.
And to share with you, I'm pretty confident I can say for the agency that we share that similar concern. This issue is way bigger than all of us combined, and it's going to take a lot of time to get there. So if we're going to prioritize, where do we prioritize? We prioritize with people.
Yeah.
And the safety of getting there and getting out of there. Once we have accomplished that objective, we can then expand outwards into that landscape and change the momentum of the fire behaviors before it even reaches that given site. So completely agree with you, Carol.
And then in the earlier table, so we had talked about the Lake Shore Trail, so that's still not part of this project. And Mule Creek Station is still not part of it. Pinewood Cove is still not part of it, right?
So they should still be part of it. So Mule Creek is something I might be calling, like one of them I'm calling telephone, because it includes like Minersville area, Bushy Tail, Mule Creek.
That's way far away.
Yeah, can you?
So Mule Creek Station is now marker 47.
So it's all of this in here.
Yeah, that comes right down. This comes right down into the station is right here. Right before the access is down there. So around that area is covered, it's the pink and that's the yellow, is that correct, Carol? Thank you.
So we're talking Mule Creek. I might automatically thinking about down in here.
Okay, so the station is part of this yellow. Okay.
Yeah, I apologize for that scale. I do have a larger map. It's not gonna help folks on the video, but we can post up a 4-footer if you want. It's just rolled up right now.
And then the Lakeshore Trail. is
Denise
that-
has it up on the Zoom.
The
right
Lakeshore
now.
Trail is a separate project.
Okay, Lakeshore separate. Right,
I'm glad you're tracking this because it is a bit overwhelming to.
well, it's just, we know where
Track
the
it all.
fires start, and so, and I know where the field fire station and they want them to stay well. Okay. And then, Pinewood Cove, the resort there.
So Pinewood Cove, I believe, is private. Privately owned.
That was a concessionaire to the Forest Service.
So a concessionaire just means they do the activities on federal ground, like, so unless I'm missing which one, we're talking about down in here.
It's, between Stony Creek and Farm Campground.
Yeah, it's considered private.
Yeah, and that's why I would avoid that. There is a trail that goes between there and we
The
haven't,
Lakeshore Trail.
yeah, we haven't quite picked that up. Like Sarah was mentioning, it's being looked at in a different way.
Okay.
I think too, the Watershed Center has expressed interest in supporting efforts
Well,
on that
because
as
there's,
well.
there's several private resorts that maybe would be, you know, Trinity Alps Resort, Pinewood Cove, Cedar Stock.
I think it's a point well taken for us to take a look at those marina operations and the surrounding areas.
They're pretty heavily used. There's a lot of people in Trinity Alps Resort, Pinewood Cove, and going down to the Cedar Stock, Trinity Alps Marina. So those are concessionaires or private resorts, but that's a potential project maybe.
Yeah, work around it and hopefully they can work within it. Yep. Yeah, and just to kind of get you guys to understand, right, this is big. We're trying to focus where we can meet an objective in a quick period of time and then take that next step. I want to do everything within the NRA, but then that's, 5 years out or something like that. We just that's not going to be effective. Yeah, so I hate making choices.
Get signature on this year.
Oh, yeah, no, I'm not for this. I'm just,
But yeah,
long term.
yeah, absolutely.
Any other questions?
Is the treatment one going to result in commercial removal as well?
Yes.
I'm gonna move it to the TRMU. If Nate, you want to pick it up. After Nate, I'm gonna allow that to tie into the collaboration with the Watershed Research and Training Center for them to present. After that, we're gonna go into SBI, then to the RCD, and then close it out with the Trinity Center Volunteer Fire Department, and if there were any others that I missed. So I'll go ahead and hand it over to Nate.
So our big planning effort right now is the Bowerman project, which I haven't really been a huge part in planning that. So I'll let the Watershed Center talk more about that because they've done a lot of the heavy lift on it. And then additionally, the Lake Forest project has been spearheaded by RCD and they're kind of handling all that. So I'll let them discuss that. And then we've got a small project up near Carville that's been completed. Just it's like adjacent to private property buffer. And then maintenance wise, we've got some treatments coming up here this spring, hopefully to get back into ballpark there at the north end of Trinity Center. So as far as planning efforts go, Bowerman's our big one in the North Lake area right now.
That's the Bowerman Ridge Fuel Break project that Watershed Center's taking the lead on. Yeah.
Yes.
And it's just federal property, federal lands.
I will let Xander answer that. Or were you nodding behind me?
I was nodding.
Okay.
Yeah. Is it time to talk about Bowerman?
Do you have any questions, Nate?
No, I just have a lot of questions about the Bowerman.
Pat did.
Yeah, so Nate, the ballpark work, you're gonna go back in, that'll be fire.
Yeah, that'll be broadcast burning, understory burning. We're gonna hopefully target about 50 acres if conditions allow.
Okay, thanks.
With conditions, that'll be kind of a late spring thing. So.
And yes, to Xander and Randy for Bowerman.
I'm connecting to Zoom.
Okay.
And I was thinking I could share a map if that would be helpful to the group.
Will you stop share and then allow for her to share? Perfect, thank you. Just one moment. Okay.
All right, just navigating.
Thank you, Randy.
So the Bowerman project, I think everybody's kind of gotten a little preview at different times, but it's a cooperative project initiated by the Forest Service, sort of in response to some of the impacts of Car Delta HERS, to work cooperatively across ownership in an all lands way. And Bowerman was selected because there were some really great opportunities to coordinate with SPI and do fuel breaks that went from the Forest Service onto SPI back onto Forest Service lands. And so we're about ready to scope the project. The scoping letter is in a good draft. It's headed to the supervisor's office for their input. And there's a map up on the screen. And my hope that you can see is the green pieces are the Forest Service. Bowerman is done specifically for the Forest Service portion of this area, even though there is this cooperation across ownership. And so the gray polygons are SPI, and the purple pieces, let me see if I can zoom in a little bit more effectively for everybody. Might not be able to see the whole area, but I'll scroll up and down in the hopes that people can get a real sense. This area, oh, there's my pointer. This area is Trinity Center in the corner here. You know, Highway 3. We get to the first units around Preacher Meadow as you're going from north to south. And so all that black patched stuff is what we're proposing to treat under Bowerman. And it's kind of there are multiple types of units. There's roadside treatments, plantation treatments, and kind of general forest thinning. But we have 3 prescriptions. The prescription number 1, or treatment number 1, as we're calling it in the NEPA document, is the best potential commercial opportunities, ground-based equipment, the most accessible stuff on the landscape. I know this map doesn't get into great detail on that. This is our overview map, just showing general placement. So I didn't want to get too much in the weeds because I know we have a lot to cover. And then just scrolling down just to get a sense, you know, you can see Covington Mill is called out there just as a frame of reference. And in the project development, through our coordination with the RCDs, we did bring in some Forest Service parcels that maybe weren't part of the initial planning, but were in amongst neighborhoods around Covington Mill. So they were pulled into this planning opportunity just so that we didn't get all of these different federal pieces and then have like a little chunk that didn't get included. And so I'm just wondering if it's best to offer up opportunity for questions right now.
Yeah, so you're gonna be going on Highway 3 from Preacher Meadow to, is it Hobel? Is that where you stopped going south?
I think that's right. Is that right, Xander? From Preacher Meadow to Hobel? Because the ownership kind of shifts along Highway 3, so it's not all Forest Service, but we did bring in a Forest Service section.
Yeah, it's sort of disjointed because of the checkerboard ownership pattern. But for the federal portions along the highway, we have roadside treatment slated from just north of Preacher Meadow Campground Road south, about as far as the dump there.
Okay. And then.
Yeah, I don't know if you can see it better as I zoom in here, or if there's a bit of a delay, but you can kind of see how.
There's just a little corner there that is outside of the National Forest System that we're not going to treat.
Yeah, because we're looking at the access road to Hillville Dump and the area around the Hillville Dump. So we're just trying to figure out where you guys are relative to the dump, because that's a potential fire start.
We have some stuff we can say on that when we get to
Okay,
us.
cool. And then, so you're picking up the federal lots in Guy Covington and kind of like scenic and Greenhorn drives? The ones that were part of the CE?
From my understanding, I don't know the road names offhand, but it was, I believe, all of the federal lots in this subdivision.
Okay. Were those were part of the CE, but not part of your contract? Is that right?
There,
Okay. And then, as we got the east side of Guy Covington on the Forest Service part.
The east side, yeah.
It's not the
So those dark
This-
blotches on.
You know what I mean? It's probably right here. Right?
Are you asking?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There. Okay. Well, how do we get like a big map of this, so we can actually look in detail at where you guys are looking?
Yes.
That would be awesome.
Yeah, and the green, just to let you know, is not ownership of Forest Service, it's the WUI. Because that was one of the things that we wanted to display in the scoping document. So this map is still a draft and we're working to refine it so it's easy to read, but we can certainly produce a big map.
Is the scoping document gonna have a detailed map?
It's gonna have a north-south tabloid. So bigger 11 by 17 maps, and the whole project area will be split into. This is kind of showing the bigger neighborhood. And we want to make sure we get Trinity Center on there just for everybody to be oriented to where that
Is the concern,
community.
Carol, with the treatments or the footprint?
It's this jumpiness of stuff along Highway 3. It's like this stretch got treated, this stretch didn't, this stretch got treated.
But they can only treat what they can treat.
Right.
They can treat what they can treat. We can treat what we can treat.
Exactly.
And so if somebody starts and treats something, then we have a foothold. I guess I'm less concerned about making sure everything gets covered as let's start getting something covered.
Oh,
Does that make sense?
I totally agree
Okay.
with you.
I'm more
looking-
concerned about the treatment in the sense that are people gonna buy their treatment? If the
Oh.
treatment is acceptable, then we can run. We got a prescription.
Well, the
'Cause you can-
community would love anything you do.
And that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, sure.
But what we're trying to do is come up with an overall plan. I mean, it's like, everybody's got their little piece and
But
it's
it's
like.
not little pieces anymore.
No, no.
Big pieces.
This is
But-
huge.
Oh,
So
yeah.
it's time to spend the money and get the stuff on the ground is all I'm just trying to speed it up a little bit, not because I want the meeting to go faster, but because I want to see something happen on the ground. I'm just tired of talking about it.
Oh,
That
well,
makes sense?
I'm,
And I think there's a lot of coordination and cooperation. So I don't want to, I'm not trying to put you down, Carol. I just.
well, like I said, I
really
wish
want to
this
be
had
the
been a whole
prescription.
separate meeting, because I feel like I'm taking up people's time, because I was, that's what I'd asked for,
I
but
can
that's
agree.
okay. We have identified assets we're worried about and we're trying to figure out a whole long-term plan. We're trying to figure out whether or not we need to apply for a grant to like have someone look at the whole area and say, well, this is what you missed, and this would be helpful to do this. Because it's like everybody's got their pieces, and so we're just trying to figure out how they all tie together, where the gaps are, and where future projects are.
Well, I think that's been the effort of the coordinated GIS work, right? And mapping.
Which
And
is
taking the
a
information.
pretty gross scale, and it's hard to look at. I don't want to take up, I'm sorry, no.
No, you're okay. I just want to share a little bit of the intent. So we selected to do it during fire safe council meetings because there's standing meetings that a lot of partners already were aware and available for. So that it's not just for the upper Trinity headwaters, it's for all units. And over the next few months, we're going to rotate through the other units that are identified in the community wildfire protection plan. Some of it's sharing what's existing, and some of it is to, discuss where future desire to go is. And so I guess what I want to draw attention to this, which I believe, Randy, correct me if I'm incorrect, but the purple is the SPI sections that are getting put in.
Yeah, the purple is the SPI, the white with the black blocks are the proposed treatment on the Forest Service part that are being analyzed as part of the Bowerman. And then we did actually have a conversation with the NRA when all of this was kind of coming together. We ended up picking up Preacher Meadow because there was a bit of a better connection with the Bowerman.
I wanted Preacher so bad. Such potential.
Yeah, I mean, there's not much of a meadow there, so we're really hoping we can open it up pretty.
Preacher Meadow is named because it has a view of Preacher Meadow, which is
The meadows down
way
in the
across
creek.
East Swift Creek.
The thing, that site looks to me like it used to be a fairly open oak woodland. And
But-
so I'm sorry if my colloquialism wasn't completely appropriate, but it's just one of those sites that there's obvious densification and almost becoming forested in a place that probably was an oak woodland or a dry meadow in the past. So
Yeah. Preacher Meadow itself is.
I know, I'm
Way,
sorry. I keep
way
saying that and it's probably a bad phrase all of
If I could have
you.
one more thing with regard to Bowerman. Bowerman was not our top priority, but it's one that seemed like it was the easiest to get started and develop a framework for outside entities to help the Forest Service do the planning work. And so I'm thinking it's gonna be 6 months or a year. Well, it's longer than that. So for me, I'm hopeful that we get to the other side of Bowerman so we can start doing stuff that's bigger and more impactful.
Well, and I think, once we get the scoping done, actually, I'm hoping that we've done enough of, the surveys are done and we have all the information we need once we get scoping comments to turn it around and sign it here this year.
Because I don't think the Forest Service can do it by themselves. So this is an opportunity. It's the way we looked at Bowerman and we encourage that as simply as possible.
Thank you.
And we'll do our part. We have THPs already in place.
Yeah, I see where everything connects. I definitely get it. I'm just, but.
And so the bigger part is to show that in all of the districts that there are other collaborations happening that may not be as apparent to everyone, just because it's a lot of formation meetings happening between different organizations, and to provide that communication opportunity for each area of the community wildfire protection plan. And then also as the Fire Safe Council community continues to work through the communities annually at the Community Wildfire Protection Plan meetings, that's the point in time to bring forward additional projects, additional things. And on the map that Denise was showing earlier, it has all of those projects on there. We just turned it off because it's too busy for today. So the second outcome from today's meeting is we anticipate there's a couple things here and there that's going to pop up that, oh, this isn't mapped on Denise's map. But after today, we'll have a nice big picture, fill in the small things that aren't mapped and be able to share that out with everybody in a better format so that it is communicable and ready to use for educational purpose to show what is in progress right now. Okay.
Communicable, is that like a disease or what? Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know the right word.
Spreads like wild.
Yeah, there we go. All right, sorry. Randy, are you good with Bowerman?
I would ask the group that. I'm happy to provide more information, but I know we're trying to cover everything.
Well, David Jaramillo had a question. I think it was while Todd was speaking, asking about if prescribed fire was gonna be used in the prescriptions, but no, I guess maybe you can speak to it too.
Actually, the intent is to write in the entire footprint for prescribed fire being covered. And that's a total of 2233 is the number of the treatment acres. And there are some areas that it will be, the initial treatment will be prescribed fire because there's some meadows out there. I think it's 44 acres that are just prescribed fire. And then the rest of it either is suitable for ground-based equipment, and we'll explore opportunities to utilize the material as we can. And the remainder of the acres will be hand treatments, and that's 618 acres. So it is, sorry, just scrolling, 1,571 acres that has the right slope and access to have ground-based equipment on it.
As far as the treatments within the Trinity campgrounds, we're looking at 2 different types of prescribed fire. Pile burning technically is still that would be within prescription 1 within the sites themselves. Then we're looking at both pile as well as underburn or broadcast outside of those sites, so prescriptions 2 and 3.
Randy, when you say that you hope to get it signed this year, is that like in May or is that like in November? I mean, what's your guys' goal for?
I know our goal is to be largely done with the analysis before the field season. And so recognizing that it just takes time to work through some of the NEPA processes and, make sure that the decision maker is happy with where everything ended up. So it would be great if we could get it actually signed in the spring, but I'm hoping all the bulk of the work is done by then. And then if we have little tweaks or, I guess it really depends on the scoping comments as well. Sarah can tell you that there's a whole range of things that can happen once you scope the document, and then potentially some of those take more time to answer fully in a way that the decision maker is comfortable with. But maybe Sarah can help me. Have I properly characterized that?
I think that was spot on.
Okay.
Yeah, that's very much how it goes.
Okay.
Or you put something out into the world, and then depending on what the interest and involvement of the public is, with questions and comments, then it can take more or less time to address and get to the finish line.
And it would be nice to hear if people are happy with what's being proposed. You don't always hear that, like, we're very happy that you're planning on hauling away some of this biomass, or, that would be great too.
Just a quick question. So is the cell tower on Bowerman incorporated into this project? The cell tower up on Bowerman Ridge Road?
Yeah.
So is anybody doing any?
Or, I'm sorry, Carol, which on that by Bowerman?
The one, yes,
Yeah,
that one is part of, awesome, okay.
sorry, I thought you were talking about
The free,
other
the
radio.
Free Ridge, yeah, that's a different. Cool.
Great, thank you for the time.
Keith, do you have other priorities, projects, or goals for the North Lake area that you'd like to share today?
Nothing new, really. It's just that every project that we put on and every forester puts on 2 projects a year. They all incorporate fuels reduction work. They all have fuel breaks associated with them. So we've got some new ones coming up, more what we call our South District, upper Browns Creek kind of watersheds, Holy Shoot, and places like that. So that's where we're likely to see a lot of new activities pop up that would be available to map. The other things we're doing, we're focusing quite a bit of, and I think because we're a little bit more nimble, we have some drought mortality operations, and we're concentrating a lot of our harvests from places where we were planning to go into areas that are hit hard with the drought mortality and and so the lower elevations, the Browns Mountain and places like that, that's where we can concentrate our work this year. It's pretty sensitive to the likelihood of fire in these
What is
places.
dead trees?
A lot of dead trees, sure.
Questions for Keith? Thank you. All right, Chris, you want to cover your projects in the North Lake?
Yeah, so we have, I guess our probably most significant project is a project we're working in conjunction with the McConnell Foundation. And it's FEMA funded, and then the McConnell Foundation got the grant, and then we're essentially subcontracted, sort of. We, put in a bid and won that bid. And it encompasses a pretty large area, and it's all on private land. And it goes from essentially just north of Trinity Center in like the Trinity Knolls kind of area. And then it runs south along the road, along Highway 3, again, only private land. And then it runs all the way down through Guy Covington and then down just a little past that into some of those bigger blocks where there's some private ownership. And that in terms of like the whole dump, there's a strip of land that's all Forest Service. It's like 300 feet wide, and then we're gonna work outside of that and work the SPI land there. And the intent would be to masticate that as well as around the dump. So that's the plan for that specific area. And so this project is currently in the kind of the planning phase. It's the outreach and the environmental compliance. The environmental compliance is difficult because it requires CEQA, which is state compliance, as well as NEPA, which is the federal compliance. So it's in the outreach and environmental compliance phase. And once that's complete, it'll go into phase 2 where we start implementation. And the implementation will be a mixed treatment, all fields reduction, no commercial harvest. There could be some biomass as a part of it, but mostly it's going to be this kind of hand treatments as well as mechanical thinning. We're hoping for a ton of mastication because it's cheaper and it allows us to treat more acres. And in this area, I would estimate the goal would be to treat around maybe 2,500 acres or so, maybe a little more, maybe a little less, but that's kind of the goal for this area. And all the work's going to be done by contractors, and the RCD will be managing the contractors and managing the projects and prescriptions and things. So that's one of that's by far the biggest project we have out there. And our other projects that's, I guess, significant is all on federal land, and it's like Nate mentioned, it's the Lake Forest plantations, which are essentially like a scatter shot of different plantations that are all on the west side of the lake. They're kind of all around. They're in like kind of the Rainier area, and then they expand beyond that. And there's just a bunch of smaller plantations. Some of them are 5 acres, some of them are 20 acres, different sizes, and we're doing different treatments in there, but it's all fields reduction. So it's a mix of cutting, piling, burning, and broadcast burning to get all those plantations treated, which will, sort of start closing in, creating a more landscape level treatment, things we can build off of in the future for future projects and future planning efforts.
And where are those?
Yeah, are most of those on Rainier Road, along Canyon?
They're kind of mixed. I would say most of them are in that area, but.
So it's like Brush Creek Road.
It's all this stuff, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
All of this.
Can you click on that group, Denise, for the people on the screen?
Because
All of those little guys over to the left.
one of the areas of interest to us is that bypass to Highway 3. If Highway 3 closes, like it did when the dump truck overturned, people were going from Mule Creek Station, Rainier Road, and coming out Long Canyon. And we run that ridge pretty regularly during the fire season and stuff. And so I know there's a bunch of plantations along there, but then there's a mix of SPI and other stuff. So that would be potentially a project to actually have a future project to just kind of make that road a little safer as a bypass route.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great project idea. And this one specifically was kind of designed, and it's under a like CCI funding from CAL FIRE. And it was basically where NEPA occurred, like where we had NEPA in hand, so we could just go do the work without having to, wait through the whole process. But yeah, so I mean, it's something that could be built off of, and that, that road system seems like a great place. So
Okay.
Yeah, the Forest Service actually has inventory data for the stuff around
I
the
thought they did
plantations.
up there.
And it was called Rainier. Kind of
They've done a
that-
bunch of thinning and there's the piles that never got burned all along the road and stuff. 'Cause I mean,
Oh, you know, that was probably the ARA work that was done along that road, you know, when
the Mule
that,
Creek Station guys, they go up there and practice, you know, so.
so they've got a
Seems like
wider road buffer they can work in up there. Because there was a letter to file when all that stimulus money was coming down. So there's some other opportunities up there that you might not see across the county.
Yeah, well, again, I mean, just it would be nice to tie that all together and actually make it like a.
Totally, I agree. There's a lot of biomass in there. It's very dense and, you know, so.
Chris, how is the response in the North Lake from the private landowners on FEMA? And how's that coming?
I would say it's going well.
Okay.
The, I don't know, Bethany's on me. I think she's more up to date. Maybe she could speak to that a little bit. Just some of the.
Yeah, if you give me just a second, I could pull up the participation map.
Okay. I'll have you pull that up, Bethany. We'll stop sharing. And while she's pulling it up, so continued things in North Lake community shipping, annual community shipping, and then education outreach, annual community meetings. We have our neighborhood ambassador program still enrolling and accepting individuals into that program. And the Big Red Truck program, which we're partners with the Trinity Center Volunteer Fire Department on. And then I'll hand it over to Bethany if you're ready.
Well, while Bethany's pulling that up, so for SPI, you know, as part of the FEMA funding, since I can work on SPI ground.
Sure.
The fire department priorities would be around the water treatment plant on the west side of Trinity Knolls. There's that strip of SPI ground that's just up the hill from that whole community. And then, yeah, anything on Highway 3.
Yeah, well, so I guess maybe after this, because we're currently working on the prioritization, because we don't have the funding to treat everything.
Right, that's
you know,
my
that's the
bigger
dream.
priorities, yeah.
And so we're doing, you know, our part, and then, you know, that type of feedback. So you just give it Bethany.
Okay, all right.
Bethany, will you zoom in into over the neighborhoods to give them idea of what the neighborhood engagement looks like, please? Thank you.
Yeah, and this is missing a few still. I haven't updated it super recently. But so mixed. Obviously, we still have another few weeks on this, and I'm hunting down a lot of the kind of bigger landowners. This big one by Lake Forest, I'm speaking with this afternoon, and I think is likely to buy in. And then there's the Trinity Knolls area.
So this is where I was talking about the SPI property just on the west side of all these homes there.
Yeah, absolutely. I have that up on GIS right now, so I'll look at it.
So she was pointing further north than what you had identified. Yeah, where your cursor just
up here.
Yes.
So some of that, like, so our footprints, I would say, is relatively set at this point, and it gets harder and harder to change it, and we've already, you know, made different changes to it, and so
That was really threatened in the river complex, people tell you, I mean, and it's really dense when going right up.
We already have a harvest permit on that strip right through there, because I think I walked it, so that may be sooner than I think.
yeah. But maybe if we can't.
Depends on the lumber market.
Then
but-
Keith can do it, yeah.
Okay.
So explain the map. What's the green versus the gray?
Yeah, so every parcel that's green, we've received a right of entry agreement from.
Okay. Thank you.
And thanks to Keith, it looks pretty good.
So the gray is in the project area, but have not provided proof of entry permission at this point in time. And again, they noted that there's a few that just haven't been input yet.
And at this point, just because of, internal capacity and it's super hard to reach a lot of these people, we're specifically reaching out to a lot of the larger landowners because it's, more bang for your buck, I guess, but people can still sign on. So if know people who want to.
Tiffany, I mean, Bethany, you haven't heard back from the Lake Forest Water Company yet?
I have not.
All right, I'll go bug them.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bethany.
Thank you.
And then Carol, did you have projects that you wanted to share from the volunteer fire department that are in planning or implementation?
Well, we're waiting to see what the gaps are. So the Freaky Ridge, have you heard for that cell tower? That's where our repeater is up Norwegian. I mean, have you heard back from Stephen Hill? That
I have
land,
not heard back from Stephen Hill, but if you have contact info for me, I would love that.
that's pretty critical, that access road up to those towers and then right around the towers themselves, because if that goes down, we don't have anything. So Hobel Dump, you guys are going to be doing the SPI ground around the county property, but the county is not doing, the densest vegetation around the dump is owned by the county. So you guys are not
We
able
don't-
to tackle
Yeah,
that.
this is only private, so no public lands, no county lands, no state lands.
So that might be a project that we would propose for Title III would be to thin around the dump itself, the closest to the dump. But is there a capacity issue? I mean, if we got a grant, I mean, can you guys do it?
I think, well, I guess depending on the timeline, our grant's like not really gonna be into implementation until 24. And obviously, nobody wants to wait for any of this work, but that's just kind of reality. And so if there's already equipment out there, and that's when you apply for funding and get funding, and we can hook you up with whoever's doing the contracting, and it's just a little addition that you kind of handle. I mean, that would make the most financial sense, so.
And there's the real potential that you could build off we can't get everything done under the McConnell because those community wildfire defense grants can treat private and state and county and tribal, not federal is pretty much the only restriction. Just to mention that, like, I think that's a good likely source of information. I mean, information, sorry to misspeak, funding that could get at just that type of thing. And if you know how far the McConnell's gonna go and you've done all this legwork, seems like that other proposal would fill in nicely, just to brainstorm ideas.
Okay, I mean, so that would be our priority right now. But there are a bunch of other things like, Tim Ritchie's not here, but so
Trinity on the
Trinity,
phone.
Trinity Center itself, we're concerned about